This is Gemara Avodah Zarah, Daf Yod Gimel. We're holding in the very bottom of Yud Beis and Yud Beis. We started the Mishnah about a Ir Sheish Avodas Kechavim. They're having one of their Chagim, one of their holidays, and there are Chanuyos that are Atarai Mi'utarais. Some were decorated for their holidays and some were not. Says the Mishnah, this was a story in Beishan, and the Chachamim Paskin, those that are Mu'utarais are Aser, V'she'ina Mu'utarais, those are Mutter. So explains the Gemara, 5 lines in the bottom, Amr of Shimon ben Lakish, explains the Heilige Reish Lakish, Lo Yishanu, the din in the Mishnah is only Ela Mu'utarais, Bivered V'hadas. Now what does it mean it's Mu'utarais, and therefore one should not do any business there? Is if it's decorated, if it's crowned with rose and myrtle. Why? Because these were items, says Rashi, excuse me, that they would worship the idol with vered and hadas, then hang it up in the shop. So it's a siman that this shop is that which of Avodah Zarah. And the reason why you should not shop there is because they want people to derive benefit from the reicha, from the fragrance, when walking into such a shop. But if it's merely fruit decorating the shop, then mutarais ma'itaima damar kra, says the pasuk, lo yitzvak biyadcha me'uma min acherem, you sleep over nothing from the banned property. And from here we learn out that what is aser from Avodah Zarah? It is hana. It has to be actual benefit as we turn over to Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. However, aval mahane shari, says the Gemara, but providing benefit to an idol, that is going to be mutter. And therefore, says the Gemara, if the shop is decorated with an item of smell, then that's going to be a problem. But if not, it'll be mutter. Rav Yochanan Amar, no, if if you cannot get benefit, certainly you cannot provide benefit. A line that I'm sure many were wondering, that seemingly if I can't get benefit, how can I give benefit? That is Shitas Rav Yochanan. So Machlekes Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish. So for a moment, let's just see the top Rashi. Rashi, in explaining Shitas Rav Yochanan, Mehena lo kolshkein, v'mahanehu, how are you benefiting the idol? Shechanvanim shebeseichan seichrei ma'i shal kaimrim heim. This is money of the priests. Inami avle labala ma'is mischayrasa ishaisa shamu matalahana she'enemu tarais lavde kaimrim heim. So again, no one's debating that if it's a non-decorated shop, it's going to be mutter. But the question is, when it is decorated, even if it's items that don't give you benefit right now, but you're ostensibly giving benefit back to the idol via the cash, therefore, says Rav Yochanan, that is aser. So Meisvei asks the Gemara on Reish Lakish, Rav Nasana Aimer, on a day that worshippers waive the tax, Machrizin v'imrim, they announce and they say, Kol mi shenaitel atara v'yaniach beroisha, anyone who takes a wreath and puts it on his head, u'beroish chamayra, and that of his donkey, l'chavoid avodos kechavim, then yaniach leis hameches will forgo the tax. V'im lav al yaniach leis hameches. That's what they would announce. And of course, the question is, what does a yid do? Yehudi shenimsa sham ma'yaseh. What should a yid living there do? Yaniach. If he puts on the wreath, nimsa nehena. What does that show? He's providing benefit. Excuse me. No, nimsa nehena. He's deriving benefit. Why? Because he doesn't have to pay the tax. Lo yaniach, don't put on the wreath then. Nimsa mahana. He's benefiting the idol by paying the tax. Mikan Amru, says the Gemara 12 lines down. The first line is Amru. Ha'anoisei v'noisin b'shuk shalakom. Someone who does business in the shuk of the Goyim behema te'aker. his animal should be uprooted. Peiros, ksos, v'kelim yerkavu. His fruit, his clothing, his items should be rotting. Bo'is uklei matachais yolichem liyam hamelech should be thrown into the yam hamelech. Says the Gemara, what does this mean? Veizau ikur. What does the Brisa mean by saying his animal should be uprooted? Haminasher parsoisem min arkuva ule mata. You should cut the hooves from the knee and below. So says the Gemara, what do we see from this Brisa? Katani mios yaniach. What do we see? It says over here, if you put on the wreath, nimsa nehena, you're benefiting that you don't pay a tax. Lo yaniach nimsa mehena, by paying them. So ask the Gemara, according to Reish Lakish, you're allowed to shop in these stores that are decorated with fruit. What happened to the fact that mehana, you're giving them benefit? Amar Meshar Rav Idi, answering for Reish Lakish, Kasav Reish Lakish, Pliga Rabbana Leider Rav Nelson, that the Brisa we just quoted was Rav Nelson, and he holds that the Rabbanan argue, Vanodami Kirabban, and we hold like the Rabbanan de Pligi Alei. So that is how Reish Lakish is going to respond. For Rav Yechon, what's he going to hold Savar? Loi Pligi, that the Rabbanan do not argue. Says the Gemara, is that actually accurate? V'loi Pligi, the Rabbanan not argue, Vatani learned in a Bryce. Hochen li'arich alakam v'leicha mehem behima avadim mishvachis batim v'sadus kramim v'kaisev u'mala berachai shalehen. One could go to the fair of the idol worshippers, animal slaves, maid servants, houses, fields, and vineyards. He could purchase all of them, and he could write and record this in their courts. Why? They should come out some adam, because you're saving it from them by taking it out of their hands. And if the bride is a kayin mitame v'chutz, then he could contaminate himself by going into chutz aretz ladon ula'arer imayem, to do what? To litigate and sue them. V'imaya kayin, ukshem shemitame b'chutz aretz kach mitame b'beis hakvaris. Pauses the Gemara 1 second. Basic kvarais in the first white lines. Like a daitach, what a kain can't go to basic kvarais. Tomadaraisai. Ella, you know what it means? Basic bras. The rabbanan a kain is allowed to go over a plowed over graveyard. Umetame lil ma'itayra v'lisa isha. And similarly, the kain is allowed to make himself tamei, to learn Torah, or to get married. Amar Rav Yehuda continues the rice in the second white line. When is this? When could the Kain become Tamid to learn Torah? Only when he has no other choice. He can't find someone else to teach him. Aval, however, is of course, this is not optimal. Rav Yesi Amar, no, I feel if even someone else can teach him, still Yitame. Why? If you can't learn from everyone. If this is a Rebbe that you can learn from, you can even become Tommy. Amar Rav Yosef Maisa b'Yosef HaKayin on the fifth white line. Shalach HaCharabah l'Tzidan l'Lmod Torah. He went after his Rebbe all the way to Tzidan to learn Torah. So what do we see? We see in this Brisa that you're allowed to buy things from the shuk of Avodah Zarah, even though by paying the regular prices you're paying the tax and you're benefiting at some level the idols. Ask the Gemara. So clearly, you can't say that Rav Yechon holds that the Rabbanan don't argue on Rav Nelson. From Rav Yechonon, halacha ki Rav Yosi. But what do we see? Palig. So we see the Rabbanan must argue. So now we're back to square one. We just said a moment ago that Rav Yechon holds that Rav Nelson is not argued. Amlacha Rav Yechonon. Loilam loy pligi. There's no machlekes. So how do we explain the aforementioned Brisa of Lokasha? One case, the Brisa is talking about where you buy from the merchant, and the merchant is shakli mirsa minei, take the taxes. And that's the reason why it's going to be mutter. Is why? Because if someone sells out of their house, they're not charging you that tax. Amar Mar. 4 lines from the bottom. Behema tiakar, said the Bryce, you have to uproot the animal. What about the fact you're painting an animal? Amar Abaya, Amar Achmana. So you say tiakar, that there are times that even go over and greater than a Sar Balachayim. You cut off the leg, ask the Gemara, then what do you do to aggravate rice? Then the animals are brooded, Ksosukelim, Yerkavu, have to be left to rat, most klimatachos. And in this brisa, the brisa explains, what does it mean? Vezel ikar, what does it mean to destroy the item? Noyal delas b'fanel v'himesa, you leave it in a pen, don't feed, and it dies me'alel on its own. So as the Gemara, we see that you don't have to actually cut off the legs, you don't have to mamish uproot the animal, allowing it to die on its own will be enough. Amar Abaye, in the third line of Yigimla Mebeis, don't ask a kasha of Shani Asa Misham, Bezaya and Kacha, and that's a karvan, it's a Bezaya, and that's the reason why you just let it die on its own. Says the Gemara, V'nishchatei Mishchat, one you shecht it. Also, Bahu Lidei Tekala, says the Gemara, so might come to transgression. For the Shaviyah Gistera, ask the Gemara, why don't we cut it in half? Amar Abaye Amar Kav, and nitzatz them as mizbechaisam lo yisasu kein l'Hashem Elokeichem. Then what do we see? That when something was hektish, something was given to Hashem, it's inappropriate to completely destroy it by cutting the animal in half, and that is the reason why we say, as we said in our brisa, you merely cut off the leg from the bottom portion. Rava Amar continues the Gemara, a second teretz, you know you can't cut it in half because it looks as if you're creating a mum in kachim. Says Nireh, mum alyu, it's mamish a mum. Answers the Gemara, you're right. Then you're right, it's a real mum. However, then there's really ostensibly no issue, and yet you still cannot cut it in half. Why? Because it appears as if you're matal mum. Says the Gemara, what's the problem? Let it be as if you're putting in a mum bibal hamum. Taval gav de lo chazila akrava. Aser. Still going to be aser. So why are you telling me that it's only an issa d'rabbanan? Answer about mom the idol chazi legufei ledemei chazi, and that is lafuke hacha excuse his case lo dami lechazi ledemei chazi bav legufei. Excuse me, v'loi legufei chazi. Says the Gemara. Let's quote back the brisa that we had on Amud Aleph. Ashkechei, we're about 15 lines down. The first one line is legufei. He was standing at the door of Tzor. Amar Lek, Eved Mai. An animal that you buy is such a fair of Avodah Zarah, you have to uproot it, cut that leg in half. What about a slave that you buy at such a place? Do we say Eved Yisrael kami bayili? If it's a Jewish slave, that's not a shayla. Ki kami bayili Eved akum Mai. Amar Le, Mai kami bayili. What's your shayla? Tanya. A guy or one who shepherds animals, we cannot raise them up, we don't lower them. So what do we see? We see there's no ability to kill such a Avodah Zarah, and therefore you would not be able to ruin and harm the slave of such as well. Omar le Rav Yirmiyah the Rav Zira Katani loicha mehan behema avadim shvachos Eved Yisrael. What's the case? Is Eved Yisrael or Eved Akum? Amar le mistaver Eved Yisrael. Di Eved Akum l'maymi bayile. If you're buying a Gaisha Eved Avodah Zarah, what do you need him for? What's the purpose of the Yid buying him? Kiyasa Rabban Am Rav Shimon and Lakish Afilu Eved Akum. So why are you buying the slave named Shechlis Tachas Kamfe Shechina? Because the Maisi make him into an Eved Kenaini. Some level, he's under the Shechina. Amar Rav Ashi Ata Behema My Mechles Tachas Kamfe Shechina. I don't understand. It says you can buy animals. What does that have to do with anything? Yika Misham Mutayu Achanami Timanti Shari. You know what the teretz must be? The teretz must be that you're allowed to buy it because you're mimatinu, you're diminishing the goyim's properties, that which they could do, and that itself is enough so too buying a real Eved. We wrap up today's share with this story. Rav Yaakov Zavan Sandala. Rav Yaakov bought sandals at such a place of Avodah Zarah. Rav Yirmiyah Zavan Pita. He bought bread. Amar lech halachavre. Yisama Ovid Rabach. One said to the other, you orphan. Ovid Rabach Achi, did your teacher really do this? Amar le, you better believe it. Idach Yasmi Ovid Rabach Achi. The other replied, orphan, did your teacher do this? Explains the Gemara of Tavayah Mibal Habayis. Zavin, they bought from Habayis. Cholchad v'chad savar chavrai mitkar Zavin, and the reason was they each thought that they bought from a tagar, and that's why they asked kasha from a merchant. Amar Rav Abba, Brei Rav Chia bar Abba. That's the problem. The shakli mersaminei. What's the problem with buying from a tagar? Because they collect taxes from the merchants, and therefore it's called that you're benefiting the Avodah Zarah. Then it won't be a problem. It will be mutter. Zimna. Rav Yochanan were alive nowadays, but the Koshakli Mirsa, in a place that he collected tax of Filim Ba'abayis, have aser. However, what's the chilek? Kechi Zavin, how do you buy it? Because Ba'abayis and Kavua Zavin are not established Ba'abayis, therefore they didn't collect the taxes, therefore they didn't feel they're benefiting the Avodah Zarah. Pick it up from the Mishnah of Siyata Dishmai.